Welcome to Rose City Book Club, who has graciously allowed us to come by tonight, hang out in the patio, and do a reading. This is especially nostalgic for me because my last book, which was an anthology called 18, was scheduled to be a reading at Rose City Book Club the week they shut us all down. So this is lovely. So I'm delighted to be back here when we read again, and we can hang out with people, and we can talk about fiction and so on and so forth. Tonight is delightful for me because we are again doing another edition of Space Cocaine, which is a themed anthology around the fact that we just thought, what the fuck, basically. But we decided this time we needed to have a little more of a thematic approach to it. Also, we brought in some new people who didn't understand the whole what the fuck of it, and they decided they needed to follow the theme, so perfect. Anyway, this is Space Cocaine, the Zoom situation, and in the spirit of this 2021, when everything is all sort of sideways and wonky, some of us will be here, and some of us will be on the screen. I think Jeb's in a bunker in Afghanistan, probably somewhere. But we'll endeavor to go through this and have a good time and laugh and cheer and enjoy each other's company. Our first reader tonight is ERIK, who is the first person on the table of contents, and created a bibliography or bio, which I didn't read. I just copy and pasted, so I can't tell you anything about him. But he's right here, and he's going to start off with his first story, which is called Whispers. Quite right. So this is a chicken timer. There's some chairs back there. And basically, when we say use a chicken, we're talking about teaching ourselves so that we're not here all night boring the crap out of everybody. Ben, would you just sit down and quit wandering around? I mean, come on, man. I'm ready.
So when the chicken timer goes off, the reader will immediately stop mid-sentence. So you may not get to hear the whole story, or you may end hopefully maybe in a very interesting cliffhanger spot. At that point, if you want to know what happens next, you're going to have to buy the book. So we're going to practice this real quick. When the chicken timer goes off, we all say, "Ah, I guess I'll have to buy the book." So it's 1, 2, 3. I guess I'll have to buy
The book.
Just so you know, Kate, you can do whatever you want and they will see me just slightly right behind you. So you appear on the monitor right ahead of me, so you can do color commentary if that seems like a good idea to you. I'm going to get started because the chicken's going to cut me off. So I'm actually going to break the rules a little bit, and then I'm jumping a little bit further into my story so that I can get more of it done before the chicken dings at me. So the only thing you need to know is that there's a beginning and an end, and it works better if you read it all, but this is a good segment for this reading. All right, chicken time. I know. Grams, Ness waved at the camera when her grandmother's image rendered on Whisper. Grams's response was more muted. She nodded. Hi, she said. Grams had dark purple hair styled into funky old lady spikes. Give her some chunky bracelets and a choker, and she'd be the spitting image of Ness from 1996. It gave Ness hope that time was ultimately more of a loop than a straight line. Ness ate an onion-flavored crunch snack. What's new with my favorite octogen? Nothing, Ness repeated, not bothering to hide her disappointment. I count on you for hot goss, Grams. You're holding out on me. What's shaking with that UPS guy and his tight shorts? You know you don't have to check on me all the time, Graham said. I've been on my own for a while, Vanessa. What? Ness managed through a mouthful. She hadn't checked in with Grams in over a week. I know you're lonely with Vivian working all the time, but I have things to do. I can't chat with you all day. Ness wasn't sure if she was losing her mind or if Grams was. What are you talking about? Twice in the same day is too many times, Grams said. The UPS guy only comes once. Gabe shot a mini herd of zombies before they could eat Ness's brains. Hey! What? What are you doing? Ness had Whisper video turned off. She said it was so they could focus on the video game. The truth was she was sleuthing. Making fat stacks to pay your way over market rate salary, she answered. Yeah, I Googled you, boss. I don't think you need any more stacks. Gabe reloaded his shotgun. Ness had a half dozen screens of server logs open, but she took a moment to switch out to a flamethrower. You shouldn't Google your boss. When your boss is a weird drone rich lady, you should absolutely Google her. Okay, well, you shouldn't tell your boss that you Googled her. There, Ness found the traffic she was looking for. And also, everyone always needs more fat stacks. America, Wall Street, Michael Douglas, Reed is good, etc. All right, oligarch, do you want to do this later then so you can have a computer hacker montage? No, Ness told him, just a sec. Gabe paused their game. Did you really make Mark Zuckerberg cry? Of course not. Probably not. Weird answer, boss. What about Bitcoin? Did you invent that? Ness shook her head. Don't believe everything you Google. She stared at her screen. It isn't possible. I'm pretty sure Bitcoin is possible. I know a guy. He has one and he's going to buy one of those ghost cities in Italy now. No, Ness shook her head and took her hands off the keyboard for a little flail. What the fuck? Do you want to talk to me like a conversation or do you want to just say things? Someone called my grandmother, Ness said, with whisper. Who? Me. Uh-huh. But it wasn't me. Is this a koan? Must be a hacker using my account somehow, and my IP address and a video filter so that Grams thought it was me. Did you drunk dial your grandma and forget about it, maybe? Ness shook her head. I did not. No fucking hacker could out-hack her. She hacked the planet before breakfast. She had stickers. She chased the traffic back. Whoever it was, calling Grams and stealing hot UPS guy gossip, well, Ness wasn't going to let that slide. I don't think anyone could log into your account that isn't you, Gabe said. Your security is, let's say, paranoid, Ness warned. I was going to say thorough as fuck. It took me like 2 hours to do that setup assessment. It's like a dating profile fucked a job interview. Ness's specialty was software that thought like a person. Her security was designed to emulate that scene in the movie where you ask questions to make sure your best friend hadn't been replaced by an alien body snatcher. The profile setup ensured that at every login, the user would be prompted with an all-new question that it would be impossible for anyone else to answer. In 2 years, my security is going to run the world, Ness said. Yeah? Who called your grandma then? Ness flipped off her monitor and bared her teeth at it like a ferocious wolf mother protecting her cubs. Viv wasn't answering. It was the middle of her super science time, so Ness wasn't surprised, but also she was irritable about it and not feeling patient. The whisper call to Grams came from the lab, from Ness's workstation, but Ness hadn't been to the lab in months. It got more complicated. Ness remoted into the lab network and reviewed the logs on her workstation. The lab login was her login, and the local whisper logs didn't show the call to Grams, which meant someone either spoofed the IP address, which shouldn't be possible, or edited the logs on the whisper server, which also shouldn't be possible. All of which didn't explain the biggest question of all. Why? What possible reason would someone have to go through so much trouble just to have a 7-minute conversation with a purple-haired 82-year-old about the UPS guy's butt? Maybe Ness did need a computer hacker montage. She paced around her house, anxious and anxiouser with every step. She was a very logical, smart person, and the most logical explanation was that there was no super cyberpunk hacker, but that she had lost her own damn mind. How far of a trip was that, really? She already had a half-dozen diagnoses from the DSM-5 and a bathroom cabinet full of mood stabilizers, antidepressants, anti-anxiety cocktails, and cherry-flavored antacids. Maybe this was it. 4 months of quarantine was all the nudge necessary to push her marginally functional agoraphobic with obsessive-compulsive tics. And that's it. That's the chicken. It is 1,000,000 degrees right now. I could just feel myself melting. So
next up is, oh, it's me. Awesome. That makes it easy. My name is Mark TEPPO, and I'll be reading the next story. And it is called the medium. The message is in the medium. I can't even keep myself straight here. I can see you, Kate. Your subliminals, Petra announced to the room of pasty white Burlage executives. Got to set the chicken.
Set the chicken, Mark.
Set the chicken. Anyway, your subliminals have been hacked, Petra announced to the room of pasty white Burlage executives. The overhead lights in the 20th floor boardroom had been dimmed, and through the polarizing of her glasses, the faces of the executives were a sea of full moons. reflecting the stark display of the ad projected onto the screen at the front of the room. Burlage's fall clothing line, in fact, on full display at twice life size. A pair of airbrushed models hugged each other with nothing but pure emptiness filling the void between them. The pair were wearing two of the company's new overcoats. The one on the left was covered in optical patterns that blurred and warped, even when reduced to the flat two-dimensionality of the screen. And the one on the right was covered with spectrum-shifted geometric shapes, blues bleeding into greens, yellows slipping towards black. The two women wore frozen expressions of distant and oblique sensuality. You were supposed to want to be them without actually wanting them, you see. It was a fine distinction, creating an illusion of desirability without descending into awkward intimations of lesbian lust. Anyway, that much was expected of the creative team. That much the creative team had gotten right. Marketing expected stellar results from this ad campaign, but a vice president's wife had started crying when she had casually seen the proofs on her husband's desk. She hadn't been able to articulate why the image affected her so, but the vice president had been in advertising long enough to know that something was wrong with the image's subliminal messaging. Burlage's chief executive called in an expert. Petra approached the glowing screen with some reluctance. Even with her glasses dialed up to the maximum, the hidden geometries of the design were making her eyes water. Here, she said, sketching in the empty plane in front of the screen with a light pen. In the white spaces, you don't think to look at because you think they're empty. There's an echo of a text message. It's clever, but it's the first place any good sublimist will strain content. And of course, Kate's sublimating to all of you right now, isn't she? Yeah. Petra drew hash marks across the coat on the right-hand model, blocking out the Doppler triangles on the coat. Down here, though, down here, this is the real trick. She closed one eye as she sketched. The geometries were fighting her efforts to obscure them, trying to crawl around to hash marks, trying to influence her and to draw their outline instead of the one she was sublimating. But she was an old pro, though, and could withstand the sight of the yawning abyss. But to stand long in that precipice drained one's spirit. Someone behind her gasped, which was all the indication she needed to know that she was done. She clicked off her pen and she turned away from the screen. With the screen behind her, all the moon faces were now in extra relief, distorted and haggard. She saw shock and horror, and even, yes, over there in the corner, not you, Luke, behind you. There's one in every crowd, isn't there? There was a sight of arousal. The line of text she had indicated wavered and danced, its letters spelling out an explicitly gleeful celebration of necrophilia. The images she had revealed showed that the models were rotting corpses beneath the coats. The woman who seemed a touch more aroused and eager than the other one were being devoured by a pair of hyenas. Their muzzles were buried between her legs, chewing and gnawing. You have a leak, Petra said to the chief executive who had requested her analysis of the image. Burlage's CEO looked at her, his face torn with disgust and embarrassment. Who did this? He asked in a strangled voice. That degree of sublimation, she said, requires access to the source file. She slipped her jacket on, shrugged her shoulders. Her jacket had been designed much like these Burlage coats. It was similar in style to their new fall line, but hers had been designed with very specific instructions that were more about security and integrity than fashion and subliminal messaging. A shiver ran up her spine as the comfortable security of the jacket wrapped itself about her frame. You'd be inclined to think that as one of your art techs with a grudge, she continued, that they can be influenced. They can be given instructions as to how to embed both the text and the image and have no recollection of doing the work. A good sublimist works by proxy. They never expose themselves directly. And in my opinion, one of your competitors hired a sublimist, but I doubt you'll ever find a money trail. Can this be salvaged, the CEO asked. No, she said. You'll have to black out most of what you want the consumers to look at. And why don't we just do that, he asked. It sounded like a rhetorical question, but she answered it nonetheless, just to make sure that her message was understood. Burlage's position in the marketplace is one that is bolstered by tradition and elegance, she said, as she adjusted the scarf around her neck. You don't do cheap marketing gimmicks where you tease your customers like that. These coats are a revision of an already successful design. You aren't iterating enough to warrant to being such coquettishness. Your customers will, ultimately, be disappointed if you approach them in this fashion. We've already paid for the placements, one of the other executives said. We can't back out. Petra glanced at the man on the other side of the table, the one who hadn't flinched away from the image she had adjusted on the screen. He was staring intently at her as he reached under the collar of her jacket for the white earbuds that filtered out most of the audible frequency. It's necrophilia or nothingness, she said. Ask yourselves which you want for your customers. Let the chicken run out. Thank you.
Guess we'll have to buy the book.
Yes, you'll have to buy the book. All right.
That's a hard decision to
It's a
make.
hard decision to make. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Next up is the woman who's been sending you subliminal messages for the last 10 minutes. This is Kate RISTAU. She is going to read us something that is very appropriate for the situation we're in. And hopefully we've unmuted enough that you can hear it. Kate?
Woohoo! Hello, how are you? I hope I'm super loud. So this is turn your video on, which is appropriate in this situation. If I start to get laggy, don't worry, just listen to me. If I stop speaking, just blow on the cartridge, you'll see. So this is not a love story. This is not a love story. You always thought it was, but you're not here to write the ending, so it's mine now. And I never went for that romantic shit. It's not your fault. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? That you did what you could, you lived a good life. We will remember you fondly, rest in peace. I'm gonna end this Zoom meeting soon. Gerard said that you could beat Goldeneye with only one bullet. I don't believe him, but that doesn't mean I'm not trying. I waited for you. I waited for you to log back on longer than I should have, really, but what else was there to do? The computer told me it said I should shut down all extraneous applications and reduce oxygen intake to extend the life stuff. Fuck the life stuff. Like, what's the point anyway? I keep losing at Goldeneye. I put Smash Mouth on a loop. Part of me finds it endlessly ironic to end my life replaying the moments it began, with music, with video games, with you, without you, with you, without you. I'm not being morbid. I'm singing All Star at the top of my lungs, trying to remember the ending to Face Off. Whose face was it anyway? Come on. You know, in training, Gerard told us about mental acuity, how to stay present and practicing on the body, in the self, aware and alive. I've ignored all of his advice. I'm an exercise in nostalgia, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Everything connects through Tremors or Prince of Thieves. Gerard's still dead. He's sitting in cold storage. All storage is cold in space. Your mom made us those DiGiorno pizzas. My mom never had that kind of money. How do we end up here? Here. Luck, I guess. And so much Mountain Dew. I should have grand and wonderful memories of you. I should speak of you like Kevin Costner with the bow and the arrow. Grandiose, grand, granting, so many people, so people remember who you were, ranting. But I've stopped recording this meeting. No one's listening. You logged off. I still hate you for that. I'm not supposed to. Big emotion. I didn't save the chat. I lost it for a bit there. I'll erase these files. You locked yourself in. You barricaded the door. You deactivated the airlock with an emergency pickaxe. You didn't want me to get sick. But I tried. After you left, that's a euphemism. You didn't leave. You died. After you died, I licked every single keyboard. Nobody should see that. We had those agar plates in high school, remember? They're supposed to show you something about hand washing. You wipe the Q-tip on your dirty hand, then you wash your hands, then you wipe the Q-tip on your clean hand. And our results were totally inconclusive. The bacteria grew on the wrong side. What did we learn? Mrs. Baldwin, she loved our project anyway. Of course she did. You were her golden boy. Gerard thought we still had a chance. His dreams, they were always bigger than his science. He didn't expect the space junk. There's irony there, but I can't really see it right now. I'll log off soon. I'll turn the meeting off. The ship is going to crash land on A0354. The fetuses are isolated. They're raised by computers. Their bodies won't be time bombs. They'll watch old movies and listen to good music, read literature with a capital L, L, L. They won't have Lucky Charms boxes, social media, Kool-Aid, all the good stuff. Man, you hated that manufactured world. Now, it's seriously the only thing that grounding me. We lost too much pressure with the last hit. The O2 won't last. The ship will detach Section 7 soon. It'll jettison infected life forms. Me. If I keep talking about the ship, though, I won't have to talk about me. Or you. Gerard, he says that's unhealthy. I told him we can talk about it later. He laughed, and he coughed. Then we stopped talking. You shouldn't have left the meeting. No one should die alone out here, not even you. Space junk. That's what I called my butt. It made my sister laugh. Space junk. I'd say space junk, she'd laugh. You hated her. Man, she wanted you to. She made it easy. You both hated each other so much that you became best friends. And that's the thing I've learned. On the other side of all this, the bad emotions are good. The Cheetos keep you sane. Doritos are amazing. We live because we're dying. I would take every single dying moment with you over this extra time with this empty screen. I keep watching The Waiting Room. You were selfish. And I don't have to put that emotion away, bottle it up, not talk about it. Gerard likes it that when we are fully here, well, he did when he was here, before capital H here, feeling our feelings, he'd be so proud of me right now, not for the keyboard licking, that was gross. And he probably super hates Smash Mouth, but for all the rest of it, he'd get that one smile that made him look a little oxygen deprived, and he'd like me here. So I'll settle into my seat, feel my fingers, my hands, and say it again. You are selfish, and I am too. We live inside our own bubble until we let someone in. And I'd let you in again. But I wouldn't take this ending. I wouldn't write this story. I wouldn't write it without you. I'd restart the whole level. I'd flip the power switch. I'd blow on the cartridge, and I'd make some edits. So, blow on the cartridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next up, we are going to have Jeb Cheryl read from Andrew next? I thought Jeb was next. No, Jeb's next. Jeb's next. He's patiently waiting in his bunker. So Jeb is joining us from some undisclosed location that's got way better art than my house. He's going to read us a brand new Gary and Rick story. So those of you who have heard Jeb read before, you know what a Gary and Rick story is. And hopefully he's got his own damn chicken timer. And we'll let him rock and roll. Can you guys all see Jeb? Do I need to do something for Jeb?
It should automatically come up.
Go, Jeb.
Okay, are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay, this one is called Costco. No, I said, gritting my teeth. Never again. Never, ever, never, ever, ever, ever again. It's just a few things, Gary said, beaming his absurd smile at me, as if that should somehow make me want to jump up and follow him straight into hell. Just a few things, I said, wanting very badly to leap from my warm bed and shout at my brother. What stopped me was the fact that I hadn't actually moved yet. Any one of a number of possible excuses already ran through my head, like a badger on cocaine bouncing off 100 locked doors in a 1,000-mile hallway, trying to find the bathroom. My legs could be missing. No, he'd probably seen them twitch beneath the covers. My tongue could be swollen. No, I'd been stupid enough to speak. I could have a date. Like you'd have a date, Gary laughed, reading my mind. The bastard knew me too well. Why are you still wearing that stupid hat? I asked, as the little crocheted balls dangling from his knit cap bounced as he laughed. Don't try to change the subject, he said, shaking his finger in my direction. You know I can't operate the forklift. I rolled my eyes. What does Mom want now? There's no way she's out of toilet paper. Batteries, Rick said, his grin widening. She's out of C's. I laughed, allowing myself to sit up. Ha! I shouted. There's a box under the sink. Those are D's, Gary said. We checked. Damn it. I cursed out loud, knowing full well I'd blown all chances of getting out of this now. See you in the truck, he said over his shoulder as he vanished from my doorway. I ran my fingers through the hair matted across my scalp. There were 1,000 things I'd rather do that day, running all the way from cleaning the sewage pipes with my fingers to licking the avocado green toilet until it turned white. Burying my face in my hands, I sobbed silently. Costco. We were going to Costco. A million memories flooded my brain. Everything from the 400 boxes of Cheetos Dad had bought last time to the 7,000 masks we'd bought several months into COVID, all of which turned out to be too small for everyone except Mom. I can't do this, I whispered into my hands, still sobbing. Yes, you can, Gary shouted. Dad's already revving the engine. Costco runs were the bane of everyone's existence. My grandparents had been survivors of the Great Depression and passed on their antiquated tendencies to my mother, who had taken to them with a verb known only to the thriftiest of bargain shoppers. We had many times been forced to visit 6 to 9 different grocery stores all in one single day, some existing in adjacent states. Just because Mom had tracked down coupons for a vast variety of items we didn't even use, all because it was such a fantastic deal. Dad, Rick, and I had actually hidden the very existence of Costco from her for several years, but a friend from her coupon club had finally spilled the beans. Dragging myself from the warm covers, I pulled on a pair of jeans, t-shirt, and faded sneakers. I rummaged for my favorite watch for several minutes before realizing I was only prolonging the inevitable, and grabbed a Casio, which would do just as well. Took you long enough, said Dad, after I scaled the 10-foot ladder into the truck and slid in next to Gary. He avoided my glare as I buckled in. We rode in silence. Dad's grim eyes caught mine in the rearview mirror on occasion, but he looked away each time. Only Mom seemed in good spirits, which was to say she all but bounced in her seat like a 4-year-old on the way to the ice cream shop. Dad's knuckles turned white as we entered the dreaded parking lot at the north end and made our way to the center. Rows of empty spaces greeted us at the border, but Mom always insisted on a search for spaces closer in. Dad didn't even argue anymore, knowing the fact that we never found one anywhere near the Costco itself was entirely futile. So we began the labyrinth-like circling from the center out. A bit like Dante's Inferno, we moved from ring to ring in slow concentric circles. There's one, Gary shouted, his voice rising several octaves as he almost broke his pointer finger against the window in excitement. That's a cart, returned Dad said without glancing over. His voice labored. Mom's eyes went wide and she bounced a little again as she signaled another spot. Handicap, Dad said with a deep sigh. Again, not glancing sideways. He knew the parking lot like the back of his hand. Veteran spot, pregnant woman, green vehicles only, electric charging station, compacts, motorcycle, cop parking, a helicopter pad, skateboard pile, rollerblade bin, shoe pile, hitching post for horses, hoverboard ramp, pogo stick holes, pigeon feeding station. Are there any actual parking spots, Dad seethed? He slammed on the brakes so hard Mom nearly went through the windshield. Several spaces up, a red SUV backed out at a snail's pace, as if the driver was just getting used to the backup camera. Facing us, a small sports car revved its engine. Don't you dare let him get it, Mom snapped as the SUV inched past the interloper. No fucking chance. Dad sneered as he floored the truck, spun the wheel and yanked back the parking brake. Gary and I braced as our gigantic vehicle drifted sideways, barely grazing the vanity plate. Spanky was all I saw as we floated into the fresh spot and slid into place. The enraged driver shot us a finger, but Dad didn't even seem to notice as he switched off the engine and poked his head between the seats. You guys bring your watches? Gary and I brandished our wrist devices. He slipped a Bluetooth device into his ear. Madge, he said, turning to Mom. Breakfast cereal. He gripped her shoulder. She half glanced at him, but didn't seem to be listening. All you're getting is breakfast cereal. She gave a weak smile. You're not going anywhere near furniture. Of course not, she said in a slightly distanced voice as she unlocked her door. We all remembered the inflatable diving pool she'd bought several years before, simply because it was discounted 60% in an end of summer blowout sale. The pool was now home to a family of dolphins and one oversized kraken, which had somehow found its way into the water receptacle during a very odd spring. Madge, he said, squeezing her shoulder again, You know I need those Fruit Loops. Of course, sweetheart, she said, without actually glancing over. Dad gave a deep sigh. Synchronized watches, he said, clicking the button on his own timepiece. Gary and I followed suit, but he had to set Mom's watch herself. Her eyes looked slightly gazed as she stared.
Aww.
By the book.
Ah, the book.
Thank you, Jeb. As you said, buy the book. We have copies here. Next up is our very own Andrew McCullough, who is going to read you a little thing called Blue Light.
Wait, you said it already?
I already said it for you.
Andrew, real quick before you start, Eric, put 2 more books in
I can just stand back.
Like 2 on each side or 1 on each
I
side?
just standing backwards.
Yes, you're fine. You're fine.
So I'm starting in the middle of the story. It's called Blue Light. All you need to know is that Dana is a play tester for a multiplayer online game, and that his girlfriend dumped him just before Christmas, and he hasn't eaten anything since. He's feeling fine, totally fine. And the other thing is that Greta lives upstairs. 2 days later, Dana had almost finished killing a particularly obnoxious troll in the penultimate quest thread when the knocking on the door distracted him precisely the right moment for the troll to backstab. This is why he didn't like people. He ripped open the door, his irritation enough that he almost didn't feel terrified that Greta stood so close, standing at the door with a cookie sitting on a napkin in her hand. What? He snapped. Greta took a step back. A cookie from Presso? Thank you for your Wi-Fi password? No, the cookie was the color of old pus speckled with black flecks. I really don't eat much. Can't say no to a chocolate chip cookie. Dana felt the fragile safety bubble around him tremble. He didn't want the cookie, but couldn't figure a way to refuse. He took the cookie. What's going on in there? She looked past him. Looks like you're opening a movie theater or something. No, just work. I need the screens. Looks more like you're the star of an interrogation. He turned around and for the first time in a while really saw his room. His workstation stood against the wall, surrounded on all sides by looming monitors turned to maximum brightness. The Blaze Corp screen, a 90-inch monster, dominated the others like the sun over moons. His chair crouched under them, the intoxicating smell of warm plastic rising from it. You sure you don't want a snack break? Overwork will kill you. Dana hesitated to tell her as it sounded crazy even to him. No thanks, I just lean close to my computer screen and it gives me all the energy I need. She thinks she was crazy for sure. And maybe he was, he couldn't say. But what was true was that he didn't need to eat. Well, and he found himself telling her the whole story. She shook her head. That explains why I haven't even heard the pizza guy recently. The youngest pizza box in the stack in the kitchen was 2 months old. A good way to say electricity is much cheaper than food. You really don't eat anything at all? I've heard of yogis going years without eating, so it isn't impossible. Well, maybe, but no offense, Dana, you're no yogi. Not a traditional one, maybe, but what if there are other ways of becoming yogi? Other ways of reaching that level of detachment and mental control? Sounds plausible. Like what? What skills do you have that you haven't told me? I'm a professional game player. Like the competitive esports guys? She seemed impressed. Not one of the competitive ones, no, I playtest. Fun. She did not seem convinced that effective playtesting required a yogi level of mental control. Well, I hope you figure out what's going on. Can't be healthy. She gave him the cookie anyway. just in case, and he set it wrapped in a brown napkin beside the sink. He meant to throw it away, but after the first couple of days, the smell blended with the pervasive scent of hot plastic into a chocolate and sugar smell that reminded him of the math class 3 decades prior. He let it stay. And I'm gonna pause there because otherwise you get right into another scene. So, all right, fine.
Well, and finally tonight we are going to have the talented and lovely Jessie Kwak read. Before I do, I just want to say thank you all very much for coming out and joining us and seeing lovely faces. I've forgotten what some of you look like. It's nice to be reminded. It's nice to see everybody again. And afterward, of course, we're certainly going to hang out and drink some beer and talk about books and all that sort of stuff. So I think we can stay in touch and close this out, right? We've all breathed the same air once. We can breathe the same air twice, right? Anyway, without further ado, here is Jessie Kwak, who's going to wind us up tonight with a lovely story.
All right, am I in the right spot? Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out and for giving me an opportunity to wear a fun dress that I've just been wearing yoga pants. I'll end up along like the rest of you. Chicken. Alrighty. This is called The Way You Taste. Something tastes wrong about the Hinahouse's living room tonight. Hardy pauses at the edge of his frame, tongue flicking the air as he tries to suss out just what it is. He drinks deep of the thing he's come for. Adriana Leon de Hinahouse's most recent lie to cover up her affair, layered over the rest of the family's tangled net of tensions like a rich, bitter, salty chocolate. And that's when he realizes, this emotion may be fresh, but someone else has tasted it first. He nearly loses his connection to the Hinahosa home entirely. The sound of an old woman's snores and a crying baby 2 rows back try to edge in at his consciousness. Hardy pushes them away and slips back into the frame. Drinks in the room. He tastes passionate citrus flashes of pure affection from the youngest daughter, the raging sour indifference of the oldest daughter, the delectable seesawing insecurities of the middle son. The family's emotions are made intoxicatingly complex by the depth of their mutual love. Even Adriana's infidelity isn't simple like some of the others he's tasted. It's tortured and passionate and unwilling, steeped ever stronger over the past month as she knows her husband has begun to suspect what's happening, but she still can't seem to stop herself. It's the strongest emotion he's tasted or felt in a decade, and someone else is here sampling a feast that should be his alone. He scans the room for the interloper and finally finds something out of place on the coffee table, a framed photo from the family's recent trip to Paris. Eiffel Tower in the background, fringed with lacy pink blossoms, the Hinojosa family with arms around each other in the foreground. And behind them, a woman, long, glossy black hair and a simple green dress, pretending to study a map. Oblivious to the tourists around her, you would think, but she's not looking at the map at all. Her eyes are boring straight into the camera over Adriana's shoulder. The shock of the realization sends Hardy out of the Hinojosa living room entirely, and he flinches so hard in his tiny airplane seat that the old woman behind him snuffles half awake. It can't be. The woman in the photo? She's just like him. 3 months later, it happens again. Hardy slips into Nairobi, into the living room of a couple he first spotted on their honeymoon last year in Barcelona. They were clearly in love in front of the La Sagrada Familia, giving newlywed joy wafting in cinnamon sugar clouds that he used to savor, but now finds sickly sweet and boring. When they walked by, though, some fierce spice in the undercurrent caught his attention. He'd slipped behind them as though to get a closer look at the church's jumbled spires, tasting the faint, anguished chatter from the boy. I love her, but I'm in love with him. The girl's pure joy blending smooth with the acidic, dynamic tang of the boy's anxiety was intoxicating. Hardy had slipped behind them when they'd asked another tourist clumsily to tomar un photo, and his soul splintered as the shutter snapped shut. It hurts every time, like being sliced through with a blade so razor sharp your body doesn't know at first the cut's been made. Now in Nairobi, the couple are sitting down to dinner with the girl's brother, and the boy and the brother are both desperately pretending the magnetic draw between their souls doesn't exist. The exquisite blend of desire and disappointment and crushing weight is sweet and heady as any liqueur, but Hardy barely notices. Someone else has sifted the scene before Hardy could arrive. Hardy scans the room again and sees it, Paris, the steps of the Notre Dame, the dark-haired woman.
Aw.
But it's still on 3.
Keep going.
I'm gonna keep going.
Well played. Well played.
Where was I?
Dark-haired woman. There you go.
He studies her from his own frame. She's bold, whereas Harney always tries to make his eye contact with the camera subtle. She's staring right at the lens once more, lips curled up in a secret smile. He jolts away in his Brisbane hotel room, the raucous sound of cars spilling into the streets below. He throws aside sheets soaked through in sweats, pulls out his laptop, and books a flight. We'll call that. Okay. Thank you. I guess we'll just have to buy the book. You guys, thank you so much for joining us via the Zoom. We appreciate your patience with our fun technical difficulties. This is definitely the first time I have ever tried to do some sort of crazy hybrid reading. I don't know about anybody else here. So yeah, you guys have been awesome. Thanks.